Okay. Not the Saturn in the 12th. Okay. With the North Node. With the North Node. Oh. Is this a roast? Yes. Is this a reading? Also, yes. So if you're interested, you can actually book a personal astrology roast at rxtarot.com. So when I see someone else's chart, it just seems so obvious, like how to overcome your issues, right? In practice, it's obviously a lot different, but in theory, it's so obvious what you need to overcome. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello, Nwanne, my love. I hope you are doing well. This is your roast or reading. Is it a roast? Well, obviously, but it's also a reading. So hopefully it's helpful. Hopefully what I say helps you get through life's difficult hills and valleys, right? Let's dive in. Let's start with the rising sign because it makes the most sense, especially when we're talking Placidus. The rising sign is the point on the horizon, the moment of your birth. It is your soul coming into your body, for lack of a better way to explain it. And I love to joke that astrology is the setting the printer was on in the Matrix the moment of your birth. So it makes perfect sense to start at the rising sign. You have a Cancer rising. This means that the moon is your chart ruler, so you are always being pulled into your 6th house. That is tricky for a couple of reasons. Having your moon in Sagittarius, that's relatively positive. Like there's not really, a Sagittarius moon is really not that difficult in the sense that you can feel your feelings, you feel expansive. Sometimes you feel them a little deeply. It is at 29 degrees. There's a little bit of difficulty there just because there's this desire to be smarter, to know more. There's sort of this pressure there to be wise beyond your years always. So there is that difficulty there. And you're ruled by your moon, right? So that means you're ruled by your emotions, and your emotions being in the 6th house, which is your day-to-day life. That's just every day, like what you got going on, your daily routine, showing up every day, and you have this intense emotional connection because having a Sagittarius moon, like I said, is not necessarily difficult. It's just intense, right? It's a fire sign, number one. Number two, it's mutable, which means it's ever changing. You know, you're not ever going to consistently feel the same exact way about anything, which can be tricky in and of itself. Because then, you know, where are you rooted? How are you feeling grounded? But a Sag moon really has two options. There's the path of freedom, which feels really good to a Sag moon who is looking to expand and is looking to grow and experience as much that you can about life. But where this can be a little bit tricky is if you're searching for purpose and meaning and you go a little too far with that, which could potentially be true for you because of the intensity going on in the rest of your 6th house with the other Sag energy. There's this desire for depth and meaning and understanding. And that's fine as long as you still find your freedom. But some people with Sag moons tend to go down the path of becoming a little bit dogmatic about like what their beliefs are and how everyone has to follow it. There can be like a religious attachment depending on your personal experiences, the way you've viewed things. You can either go down that path of like the free bird, like I was saying, or very, very religious. But you tend to believe in something. Now, where this could be different for you is whatever experiences you have had. Pluto is already, it is the generational planet. So it's not necessarily, it doesn't seem like such a specific, like personal thing, but it is when it is in your 6th house, right? Pluto is transformation. It's depth of experience. It's intensity, right? So learning to channel that into something useful, into something helpful is already a desire, right? The things you've experienced in your past, you want to create something from them and transform them. especially your past, with being a Sag South node. This is really interesting to me. I'm a Sag North node, you're a Sag South node. And it's very interesting for the sheer fact that you're not necessarily meant to only do things from like the Freebird standpoint. You're not supposed to just do it for the plot, you know what I mean? There is an energy here of like, I need to figure out how to take my past experiences and actually create solid knowledge out of it. Being a North node in Gemini is constantly asking you to know enough. Like, you want to learn enough, you want to know enough, you want to know everything, which can be really intense. And this is in your 12th house. Now, immediately I have a really cool idea on how to handle this. But before I get there, the North node in your 12th is really complicated in Gemini because it's about trusting the unknown. But Gemini wants to know. You want to know the unknown. That's tricky. So the way I was like, there's kind of a cute little way that you could play with this. You need to be listening to things that are like actually helpful, and you need to like put a book on tape. Ew. That was literally the oldest thing that has ever come out of my mouth. You need a book on tape. Go to Audible or some sort of site like that where you can have books that you're just listening to while you're asleep. The reason I think this could be, and you don't have to do it all of the time, but the reason I say that is your subconscious wants knowledge, but your awake conscious wants experience. So you can do both at the same time, right? You can live your regular life, do your own thing, connect emotionally to what you're experiencing. That's really what you want to do on a deeper level. But to work with this crazy 12th house, because North node is asking you to like know enough, be enough, have enough information. And Saturn in Gemini is also here retrograde. So it's fascinating to me because Saturn is restrictions. It's patience is one of my favorite ways to think of Saturn, because it's not that you won't get it. It's not that the things that you desire are impossible for you to get. It's more so the fact that Saturn expects you to be patient. Saturn expects you to wait a minute. Like, wait a damn minute. You're going to figure it out. Give it a minute. Give it a rest. Give it a breath. And for you, with your 12th house being so intense like this, I do think there's a need for you to use that to your benefit. Use that structure. Use that restriction in a positive way. Because I think a lot of people, my husband and I were just talking about this a couple weeks ago. We were watching Jeopardy. And my husband was saying it was so frustrating to him because there were questions where it just seemed like they narrowed down the answers. So you have to know specifically. And he was like, it makes it harder when they do that. And I was like, it's actually easier for me though. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if you're just asking a random question about history, it's going to be harder for me to remember the time gap and the time range. But if you give me a time range and you say this other specific thing that ties in with it, now you have to have two answers that starts to narrow it down to only one obvious choice. And I feel like that's what your 12th house is trying to say. Stop trying to know everything. Stop trying to understand anything and everything. Because South Node in Sagittarius, you will experience things, okay? And I think sometimes the desire to run away from those experiences can block you from understanding your North Node. But when you realize your North Node in Gemini is asking you to truly deep dive into your subconscious, into healing from your past, into no longer feeling restricted by the path, but instead feel more free by choosing the path. Girl, I'm channeling this more than I'm actually just reading the chart right this second. This 12th house is the answer. Start listening to books while you're asleep. Start letting yourself consume information while you're asleep, because I think there's a restriction. Where's your Mercury? Okay, Mercury in Scorpio. It's not really, I think there's two sides of you. One side of you feels louder, which is like, I have to know enough. I have to have enough information. But the other side of you I'm about to get into is so artsy and needs to trust that. So, okay, let's continue. Let's get into that. So first house, very Cancer energy. This is so interesting because who you are is gentle. You're soft, you're kind, you're gentle. So your second house is empty, which means it's up to you how you see your self-worth. Leo energy is in there. So your ability to see your self-worth has everything to do with how much you're actually expressing. Jupiter and Leo in the third, you want to open your mind. You want to experience more for you. That's not a selfish thing. But I think part of that is it's hard for you to do things alone. But you're meant to. Literally Lilith and Aries up here. You're meant to do things alone. You're meant to really fall in love with you. But I think that can be a little bit complicated with this fifth house. So before I get over there, Jupiter is all about expansion. Leo is about identity, creativity, expression. So once you learn to express yourself more, you're going to find more expansion with that Jupiter. Fourth house is how you feel safe. Fourth house Libra, that looks correct, but I want to double check. Yes. Fourth house Libra Mars. You want to make sure everything you do is right by your family. You want to make sure everything you do is right by the people who keep you safe. So if those are blood relatives, if you were adopted, or if you have a group of friends that make you feel really safe, or even like me, I married in to a different family and now that's my family, right? If it's something like that, regardless of family, whatever that word means to you, you want to make sure everything you do is okay by them. And that will get you caught every single time, because if you don't learn how to use that Libra Mars to your benefit too, like doing something for others so you can get something too, it doesn't always have to be one for one, right? Sometimes you're going to give more, sometimes you're going to get more. But learning to find the balance in that, instead of being afraid if everything is in balance. Does that make sense? Finding the balance, finding the flow, and not being so hung up on if it's balanced. Just do your best, right? Trust your gut on that. Also, Libra Mars is so interesting because when you do take action, when you feel good about it, when it is balanced, it'll feel like this really harmonic moment of like everything is in harmony and everything comes together. But it's not always going to be like that. And I think that's a hard thing for Libra Mars to hear, because there is this desire that, you know, to become a lawyer and to keep everything balanced, and like the right people go to jail and the wrong people, they don't win the case. And it's like, yes, it's good. That's not the way it always works. And I do think that sense of justice can be a little bit overbearing at times. So when there is this imbalance, learning to come back to this fifth house. Your fifth house stellium is probably the most important part of your entire chart. Having a Scorpio stellium, you are very heavily influenced by Pluto. So again, Pluto being so close to your moon, being close to your south node, all of that, and this intensity of trying to understand your own depth, trying to understand yourself, learning to let it be more of a creative experience is where this answer comes together a little bit. So the intensity of having that Scorpio energy, having your sun, which is what gives you life. Your sun is your vitality. It's what makes you feel alive. Sun in Scorpio You love to research things, to get to the bottom of things. You love to create and alchemize, right? You love to transform things, Pluto. You want to take something that is ugly and scary and make it beautiful. Don't forget that you have that ability. Don't forget that you have that capacity to take something that may seem really scary and really bad and turn it into something beautiful. That's where your Libra Mars is going to come in handy when you don't obsess over the perfection of, is everything equal? Does that make sense? Use it to create more balance in your life instead of being afraid of losing the balance. You're going to lose the balance. You're going to lose the balance from time to time. You can't be afraid of that. You're also a Mercury Scorpio, which I always love to pick on a little bit for a few reasons. Mercury Scorpios tend to be really good liars. And what I mean when I say that is they genuinely will just tell people what they need to hear. They'll leave out details and they don't think it's a problem until later that person is like, wait, you didn't tell me that. And then it's like, oh, I didn't tell you that. It's like a whole moment, right? That happens a lot. So with that being said, there is a sense of like a little bit of a liar, and it doesn't mean in a bad way. It could even potentially mean you're trying to like save people's feelings. Use that to your benefit. Don't say you're not a liar. Don't, because then I'll know you're a liar. But I also love to call Scorpio Mercury's parcel tongue. You know, like Harry Potter, how they can talk to snakes. There's just this silver tongue with a Scorpio Mercury. You know what to say that's going to smooth things over. You know how to charm a snake. You know how to, and this is where it gets interesting, right? Because if you have this deep sense of justice, you may be able to use this energy towards like catching, you know, like I think of like catching a predator or whatever. Like there's these people behind the scenes pretending to be somebody in order to catch a predator. I feel like you would be incredible at that. I think you would be so good at that. Being able to like sneakily like catch people who are doing the wrong thing. Oh my God. If you ever want to go down a path like that, 100%, 100% recommend. But being a Scorpio Mercury, there can also be a sense of calm with like darker things. Edgar Allan Poe and, just like creepier movies and things like that could be things that actually give you comfort. It's just because you understand the duality of life. You understand the deeper, darker aspects, and keeping that balance is something that's probably important to you. You also have your Venus retrograde in Scorpio. This is interesting for a couple of reasons. Having a Scorpio Venus, you are such an intense, passionate person that is in a relationship, right? In your partnerships, you want this all-encompassing, obsessive love. And is that necessarily healthy? No, not all the time. But there's sort of a beautiful disaster sort of energy there. And what I mean when I say that is Scorpio Venus loves to transform with somebody or have somebody to go through the hard times with, right? So when you're in the trenches, when things feel hard, when things feel like, how are we going to get through? And you make it through, it's so much more satisfying to be with that same person. So Scorpio Venus wants that deep kind of love that can overcome all odds. But it's also retrograde. So a part of you has to learn how to do this within first. Having a retrograde Venus means you have to love yourself first. And if you don't, that is the energy you're going to be sending out. And if you've had a hard time with love in the past, that retrograde is why. Learning to love yourself first is important for everybody, but especially if you have your Venus retrograde, because it's all internalized. And whatever you're feeling on the outside is almost like more, we feel it more intensely on the outside as well. We can pick up on things that you may think is hidden. People are feeling it. So connecting back into your Venus, connecting back into your heart space, coming back to yourself is how you're going to call more love and abundance in. Venus is also about finances, right? So Venus in Scorpio is such a workaholic because there's this desire to get to the bottom. Like, I'm going to do the best that I possibly can with this until I find the bottom of this basin and I make it all happen. And I find that interesting because if you channel all of this into a creative energy, this could be so profitable for you. If you let the 5th house, which is all about creativity, creation, it's ruled by Leo. If you let this energy be a good thing, this energy is squaring for you. It's more of a rectangle, but that's all right. These energies are squaring, right? Scorpio and Leo do square, but it's not impossible to work with. It's just finding the juggling act, finding the flow between being seen and then maybe having a fear of being seen, sharing your work and maybe like not feeling so comfortable while you do that. Moving through that is where you're going to start to feel really good. Libra is also very creative and has this desire to make beautiful things. So channel that. Last but certainly not least, what is this? Your downfall will be perfectionism. Your downfall will be a desire to be appreciated, a desire to be seen for how you want to be seen. That will be your downfall. Chiron is the biggest wound in anyone's chart. Chiron in Capricorn is the wound of achievement, the wound of success, the wound of what if I am successful, will I change? Or I'll never be successful because no one sees me the way I want to be seen. And instead, using that, because a lot of the times people with a Chiron and Capricorn tend to be some of the hardest workers. You also have your Venus in Scorpio. So it's not necessarily that you can't do the work. If you're struggling with procrastination, if you're struggling with getting things done and you're like, I don't know, I do really struggle with being good at what I do. It's such severe perfectionism that you may not even be aware of how much you've been holding yourself back. Because Capricorn Chiron on your descendant, is it the same degree? It's the same exact degree as your descendant. Your downfall is waiting for other people to see your greatness. Ouch. I mean, same, but like for totally different reasons. Your downfall will be waiting for others to see your greatness. When you can see it first and you show up in that energy and you just glow from within, when you glow from within, when you take all of this darkness and turn it in on itself and you create this beautiful glowing black hole, it's going to be stunning. It's going to be beautiful. But how are you going to get there? You're going to work with this 12th house. You need to learn self-hypnosis. You need to learn letting go of the past hypnosis, not getting stuck in perfectionism, not like anything like that. Plug that into your ears, even if it's just YouTube. You know what I mean? If you find videos on YouTube and you're just like listening to people like TED Talks about not being a perfectionist and like fall asleep to that. The reason I'm saying fall asleep is you need this in your subconscious. When you start to work with your subconscious and you start to reprogram how you see yourself, your whole chart is going to click and you're going to be like, wait, this is kind of cool. Thank you so much, Nwanne, my love. I really appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed your roaster reading. And if you want to get one for yourself, you can book it at rxtarot.com. Thank you so much. Bye.